Okay, next I'm going to share my screen. And so basically what I'd like to do tonight is we have an archive for this meetup at harborknot.com. Copy out. Harbor Knot is my small LLC freelance business. And this is where I like to keep information and notes on past meetups. This meetup used to be once a month. Due to COVID and my scheduling and just massive amounts of work that came in with everything going online, I haven't been able to host it that often. And so it's kind of sporadic at the moment. What I was going to do for tonight was we had our topics laid out in the meetup on meetup.com. And as we discuss each one of these topics, I was going to build up the notes on this page and style out this page in Gutenberg and kind of get it to a much more stylized place with all of our notes from tonight's conversation. So we can see here that I'm logged in. This is a pretty simple custom theme. It's pretty bare bones, but it's not the bare bones theme, if you're familiar. It's just a blank custom theme that I've styled up a little bit and has Bootstrap in it. Other than that, we're just going to be using the Gutenberg blocks, discussing where we can find more blocks, how we can create blocks, maybe even show an example or two of blocks that have been created or custom made. So is there any one of these topics someone would like to start with? I know we had a couple of coders here. We had a couple of content editors here. Would anyone like to pick one of these topics?
It's Jennifer. I nominate saving and reusing block content.
Saving and reusing block content. Okay. So when we open our block menu, we have a few tabs up here. We have blocks, we have patterns, and we have reusable blocks. This is my layout, is a block. This is a custom, or not a custom WordPress block. This is a standard WordPress block. We can create different layouts with this block and then reuse them on other pages. So I will say this is the first layout. And in here, they already give you some content. I'm going to change this to an H3, and I'll get into that later this evening on another topic. But you can see here, the block that it gave us has 3 columns, a heading, a paragraph, and an image. What we can do here is, we can change this image. Let's just grab a new image. Maximum upload size, that makes sense. Good one. Good. You know what? Let's use one already. Let us use this WordPress meetup image. Add to gallery. Oh, so that's actually a gallery block. But what we can do in here is we can start to add more blocks. I have a, here, let's just, there we go. This is what I was looking for. We can start to create more content in this area. And we can start to add more blocks in here. We already have a gallery block in there, so I'm going to add, we don't have any comments on this site. SoundCloud, no, I don't know any SoundClouds. Let's add a block quote. Does anybody have a quote that they like by somebody? No. Okay. To
Okay.
be or not to be? Shakespeare. Let us update, save this page, and preview it really fast. So you can see that we've now added this content. We have our 3 columns. Sorry, I'm pointing at the screen. You can't see me what I'm actually pointing at. We have our 3 columns, and we have our to be or not to be quote. My block quotes aren't actually styled, which is why they look kind of poor and unstyled. But if we want to change this block, where
Scott, can I ask what this, it says convert to regular blocks. Is this like a different type of a block than a regular block?
so if you were to convert this to regular blocks, it would take it out of the savable content area. So you can see that I just saved this block and the quote's not even in there. This is kind of finicky. This is actually one of my complaints about Google. It is a little finicky like this. But let me drag that block quote. I don't even do that. Wow.
I think you have to use like a header instead of a paragraph to use the block quote, the quotes in
A
a block
header
quote.
instead of a what? What's that, Daniel?
The content of the block quote has to be like a H2 or H3 or something on the block quote.
That doesn't make sense. See,
I know it doesn't, but I've done that before.
what I would expect to happen with this block is to be able to come in here and edit these 3 columns, you know, change them into 2 columns if I need to. And I'm kind of not seeing that, which is a little disappointing, to be honest. If I come up here, columns or groups, what happens if I change it to a group? And that takes it out of the saved content. So to be honest, I don't think that's very intuitive. We're going to start over a little bit here. Okay. So let's go back and do this again. So the reusable tabs. This is the first layout. Start again. So we have 3 columns. We're going to hit edit. And it doesn't really give me much of a chance to change these 3 columns. So what if I start removing blocks and try and start over with the edited content? Let's see what that'll give me. Okay, there we go. Now I can finally find my columns. So can I change this? Not really. What if?
Scott, if you create a row and then just add an inner section, you can play with the columns.
Daniel, do you know if that saved my edit?
Did it? Said it
Add
did.
numbers to your list. Press 3 to remove and all screening is limited to 25 tele.
Sorry, Steve, had to mute you there. So this is my first saved paragraph in the column. So I see it in there. It is in my edit content block. If I were to go to a different page now, say back to our accessibility meetup, I should be able to now recall that block in here. So this is my first layout, and it'll even give you a preview of your reusable content. So now I'm using this in this page. Let's take it a step further and let's add an image. Okay, so it didn't add the image inside the block like you would expect. You have to place the image in there, which it's still not doing. So let's hit enter. And so now that's an important note. When you add a block to save content, you need to add that block inside of the save content block. So let's add our image really fast. And then I'm actually going to add that note. From within the content window, from within the saved content window. We're going to update this page. We're going to save this block. And now, if you remember, we are actually working on a different page to start with.
Hey, good.
So if we go back to that Maximize Gutenberg page, you will now see that updated content on that saved block, just like so. So if I didn't even need to save this page. Remember, I just saved the block only. So if I now refresh tonight's Meetup page, we see the updated block content on the page. So that's using saved and reusable blocks. You can put any type of content in there. You know, you could put a testimonial bar. You can put images. You know, you can see columns as we all saw, and then you can save that block and reuse it on any page you like.
Hello?
We have WP Bakery also has an option for that. Can anybody think of any other examples of plugins or things that might use this? Could anybody think of a use case for this on their own website?
Blog bios?
Sorry, go ahead, Jennifer.
Blog bios?
Blog bios would be one. If you add, I believe Jennifer is talking about like the author info at the bottom of the blog. Yeah, so that could be one reusable block. Can anybody think of another?
Yeah, I'm using it on my genealogy site. I created a reusable block that has text in it to explain things, and a comment block, and so they can send information back to me. And I just insert that on every page when I'm putting a photo in.
Yeah.
I was thinking it'd be cool for custom post types, like if you had like a staff post type and you wanted to make content for a staff page and you knew you were always going to have the same types of data areas, that'd be helpful.
So one thing, so if we were to create this block again, you know, put in another showing of it, and we were to edit the content, but we didn't want the first block would change, we would need to make sure that we changed the title on the second block and saved it again. Otherwise, when we edit the content, it'll change both blocks. So it's important to remember to have two different layouts if you want to do something like that. But that is a good use case. You know, building your content once in the way that you want, and then saving that block again and again for something like an employee profile or an item that you'd like to showcase. So adding on to some of our notes here, you can add multiple saved blocks. Some of the use cases, Let's start a list. Employee bios. What was the other use case that we had? Author bio, posts. There was one more that somebody mentioned.
Something about custom post types, I believe.
Yeah, author bio on posts.
I see.
We can do what's if you wanted to reuse like a testimonials block. So there's all sorts of use cases where if you needed to duplicate that layout and then edit, minor pieces of it, where that reusable content could come in handy. Reusable content.
I was thinking it'd be cool for like a call to action block.
Yeah, definitely. I could think of one website. Got to edit this now. You can't just click in there. You have to click the edit and then go in. I like Gutenberg, but sometimes it's just not intuitive like that.
With like cadence blocks, you have a lot more control over rows and columns.
Yeah. One more reusable block we're just going to make really fast is like employee 1. Grab this handsome gentleman. Delete those. Now remember, we need to click inside the block. We can't add a block from the menu. Oh. Did you see how it changed all 3 like that? That's interesting. So you can only save one reusable block at a time. Has anybody experienced that? So you actually can't make employee cards and multiple reusable items of one block. That's really interesting. So in order to achieve what you would want in that sense, you would almost have to make a custom block or find a plugin.
Yeah, I guess a custom block is the way to go. I've never used this thing before, so this is interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. Some of this, we're all finding out for the first time. When I think about reusable blocks, that's how I would think that they would work.
I have found if you put everything in a group and then save the group as a reusable block, it makes it a lot easier to control.
It even says right here, manage all reusable blocks. Let's leave. Let's see what that takes us to. But where is this? Where in the menu is this? Where are we? This is weird.
Is it possible that when you change the title of that reusable block, it just changed the title? It, like it overwrote what was existing?
It changed the title for all blocks. But this is kind of interesting. I'm treading new water here. There's our headshot. Below that, we'll say name, Derek, DOB 2220. So we're saving this one block layout. Okay. Now what happens when we go back? We should see our two blocks. We have employee and change the title, which was one of our examples from earlier. So we can add new blocks. It's kind of weird that this is not like a menu item over here. Like we don't have blocks. Like how do I get back to this? That's what I'm wondering right now. That's interesting. The way that I would get back to this, like if I go to meetups and I go to add we should now see two reusable blocks in here, which we do. We see our employee and we see our change title. So if you wanted to add more blocks, you would have to go back to this manage all reusable blocks link. And then it doesn't give us an option to duplicate, but there are plugins that will allow you to do that with post types. So I'm thinking, I don't know this plugin, but giving it a quick glance, it was updated 2 weeks ago. It has lots of installs. It's good with this version of WordPress. We should be okay using this one. So let's try this. Let's try and duplicate a block. It's a lot of clicks. No? Anyone disagree?
Yeah, I'd end up adding a custom menu item for that. That's annoying.
So yeah, now with that plugin, we can
Cool.
duplicate a block, which would speed things up a little bit. And so then I would go in here, we should have the same content. And I can call this employee 2, change the head site, or change the headshot, change the name. And now when we go back to our post, I'm going to add our 2 different employee blocks. So now that we know a little bit more about block content, I'm going to keep our 1 block, but I'm also going to add a column for our 2 employees. In here, reusable, employee 1. Can I put him inside that column? Yes, I can. And then employee. Huh. Let's try that again. There it is. And there we have employee 2. So you could either create 2 blocks, or you could create 1 block with 2 columns in both employees in this case. Whichever would be more efficient to you. My guess is if I had to do this, I probably wouldn't create 2 employee blocks. I'd create 1 block of employees in all the columns that I wanted. But we're just exploring tonight and seeing what's possible, seeing what we can do with this and really maximize Gutenberg for our uses. So I feel like we've explored that reusable block content. Are there any questions before we wrap up on that topic? Well, I hope that helped. Would somebody like to pick our next topic? I'm just going to get this a little bit more in order before we move forward. Is there any other topic somebody would like to discuss next? We just did saving and reusing block content. I'm going to change that to an H2. Next, we have extension plugins, block layouts and spacing. Well, I guess we went over block. Sorry, go ahead.
Developer resource.
Developer resources. Okay, so Gutenberg is written in a JavaScript library called React. React is a very modern technology, or a very modern library, I should say. JavaScript has been around for a long time. But the kind of wave of the future is React and somewhat moving away from PHP, which WordPress was originally built on. One of the best resources for building custom blocks and using your own code or writing your own code is the WordPress Developer's Handbook. I'll drop this link in chat as well. But this first page will kind of go over the breakdown of what Gutenberg is, give you a little bit of an introduction to it, and then it very quickly gets into tutorials on development. I've done this first tutorial. I can say from experience, it's not fully up to date. It's missing small things. In order to get started in this, they kind of expect you to have experience with Node Package Manager, NPM, which you might have heard of before, and using Terminal, and kind of being familiar with other development local environments. I could get more in depth into this. I often lose people in the conversation when I go here, so I don't go here often, but if people want to know more, I can go more in depth.
You'll probably lose me, but just go, because my ex-husband I was with is a software architect, and so I was around it for a really long time. So, I mean, I can't actually write the code, but I can listen and kind of hang in a little bit.
Sure. So for those of you who aren't familiar with NPM, NPM is a Node Package Manager, and we use NPM to pull in packages that help enhance our websites. I will pull in packages like any of your plugins could potentially be an NPM package. Instead of installing them as a plugin, you would install them using NPM. You can't necessarily install all your plugins using NPM, but that's just kind of a parallel that I'm trying to draw. These lines right here are code that you would put in your terminal. This is the terminal.
Right, I've done Terminal.
And you would navigate to the folders on your computer, and you would plug in these lines. And this whole page is all about just getting started and installing all the packages you need to start developing. Moving forward in this tutorial, what page are we on? Tutorials Handbook. The next page will go over the development environment. Wow, that's, yeah, not intuitive. And then finally, they'll get into creating a block. They go into the anatomy of the block, and this is where the code heavy stuff really starts. This is React. We import our block types, and then we have an edit state and a save state. We also have our styles, which some people might be familiar with. It's much more commonly used. And then we'll start adding different input boxes or selectors or different things depending on what your block needs. I can show you one example of a custom block that I've built. Just let me log in here, or actually I'll scroll down and show you what it is first. These testimonials. So notice how they're placed in columns. They stretch all the way across. They're very malleable like that. We can kind of change how we use them or where we place them. This could potentially be a reusable layout if I were to build it in Gutenberg. We'll log into this site. And we can see here, we've installed it just like any other plugin. A little slow. They had Elementor on here, but CF blocks. So this is what it looks like when it's just installed, kind of fresh out of the block, developer WordPress. Right here, I titled it CF blocks. And when we go to our home page, we can see how we'd enter the block there, enter the name, and then we can actually select the different color background or a custom color. I didn't actually connect the custom color because of their brand. I did this on purpose. I only wanted to give them the 2 colors. Also, limiting them to the 2 colors helps with ADA compliance and having that contrasted background against the text. So I know a lot of things with like Gutenberg. It's scary for me as a developer to hand off something like Gutenberg to a client at times because it offers a lot of freedom for them to expand the brand into places that it shouldn't be going. Another word for that we use in the industry is bastardizing the brand. And so this is another way to still kind of contain those options and keep things on brand when you build your own custom blocks. These were all built in React. I'll go into the code very briefly. It's this website, content, plugins, CF blocks. This area is a pretty common setup. We have our source. So as you can see, this matches some of the code we saw on our Gutenberg tutorial. And then we go into our edit and save states. So editing would be when you're editing in the editor, and then saving would be what's produced when it's saved on the front end. So I can go, this is our backend editing file. And then this is what it looks like on the front end saved. So if I look at this code, it says block quote, p site close block quote. And go back to the home page really fast. And I'll show you what the code looks like in the editor. Block quote, p tag, site, block quote. So that makes for really clean markup. One reason I personally really like Gutenberg is because of its clean markup. It is essential for SEO to have clean markup. When you get into your page editors, you lose a lot of that clean markup. It slows down your site. Google won't be able to read it as easily as they will this site. And so it actually boosts you up in SEO to have good, clean markup that Gutenberg produces. That is the main reason I push Gutenberg as a developer. Any questions on custom blocks? I can add these links of the developer handbook to our notes.
I just have a question since you touched on accessibility. Did
Yeah.
you use the color contrast checker for your background colors?
I do.
I was just curious if they passed.
Wow, I don't want to embed that URL. I just want to copy it. These colors do pass. I can run them through the color checker in just a second.
No, you don't have to. I was just curious.
Yeah, these colors pass. I believe it's AA compliance. So there's, and I could be slightly wrong on this. There's like level 1, 2, and 3. I
Yeah.
believe those colors passed a minimum of like level 2, which is his requirement for his business. At UCLA, we need to reach level 3, I believe. So different businesses, depending on their for-profit, nonprofit, government-funded statuses, etc., need to meet different level requirements of compliance.
Well, we appreciate you building accessibility into it because 98% of websites don't have it. So
Yeah, it's I would say at this point, 70% of my job at UCLA is ADA compliance and making sure it's happening over there.
right, because you're a educational institution. So
Exactly. Yeah.
You're aware that the same law that enables people to sue a store for not having a handicap ramp, that same law enables people to sue a website for not being ADA compliant, for not having, readable text and whatever. And just in recent years, there have been some high-profile websites that have been successfully sued. Beyonce, I believe, her website was not ADA compliant, and she was sued for a lot of money. A sports team, the which one escapes me right now, but a major league sports team was just sued recently. So this isn't something to take to shrug off and just kind of save to the end. This is really serious business.
Yeah, absolutely.
it
Absolutely.
is, and in California, it is law. It's called the UNRUH law, UNRUH. So
Yeah, absolutely something to be taken very seriously. And, I work with a lot of people across the country, and it seems to have started here on the West Coast, as it often does. And I see the word spreading fast. So it's nice to see. Absolutely. The other way, there is one more way to create a custom block that I'm going to show really fast.
I have a little question about that, like ACF blocks.
Yeah. So Advanced Custom Fields is a very popular WordPress plugin. There are I believe there's a free version, or I don't even know if it's free anymore. It's been so long. There's a cheaper version and a pro version, I believe. And with the pro version, you're allowed to create custom Gutenberg blocks using PHP. You don't have to write that very modern React code that I was just showing, but you still have to write code. On the Advanced Custom Fields page, they give you an example of how to register a block. And they've come a long way with their plugin where you can customize it to look pretty spot on with how the front end is going to look. So this tutorial, which I've also linked on our page, you can feel free to read through this one. I find this method, I've created blocks using both methods, and I find this one to be a little bit, well, not a little bit easier, a lot easier actually. If you're familiar with Advanced Custom Fields, you should be able to pick this up and run with it. It's not especially difficult if you have experience in it. If you don't have experience in Advanced Custom Fields, that's okay. This plugin is extremely well documented, and very easy to get started in if you're interested in theme development. It is a code writing plugin. It does expect you to get involved in some templates and some file structures in WordPress, probably your child theme if you're just getting started. But an excellent plugin if you're interested in going down that road.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm going to pick the next topic here. We're going to go into extension plugins. Does anybody have some good extension Gutenberg plugins that they've come across? It sounded like we had a few Gutenberg users. Anybody want to tell us about their experiences with the plugins?
So WooCommerce blocks,
WooCommerce blocks,
Genesis blocks, and Cadence blocks.
For e-commerce, why don't you tell us a little bit about WooCommerce and your experience?
So the WooCommerce blocks, it's not complete yet. I still would consider it beta because it doesn't support all of the payment providers.
Okay.
It supports the native payment providers, but not necessarily the add-ons. So last check, it did did not support Stripe, Authorize.net, or Braintree yet. But it did support the Jetpack payment one, and it supported the native PayPal. It gives us a little more control over doing a single page checkout. Gives us a little more control over designing our product pages. I like it. I've actually used it to generate like a payment block, not a payment block, but I've got 3 products that I want to highlight all 3 products in a table.
Okay.
Whatever that's called. That I found a feature in there that works quite well for that.
Okay. Excellent. Thank you for sharing. WooCommerce, if you're not familiar with WooCommerce, I don't know why that's not. There's no weird things. Like I'm not getting any of my menu items right here on anything. Oh, it's up here now because I minimized it. I'm in tablet view. So they moved to the top. Learning so much about Gutenberg tonight. All right. Does anybody else have another plugin they'd like to share? Anybody have any experience using any of the extensions for Gutenberg out there? I can share one. There's a couple of plugins like this that I've seen come up. It's a whole library of blocks. Some of them you seem to get to pick and choose the blocks you want to use and kind of pay for them one at a time, it seems like. Has anybody used any of these? Does anybody have one that they would recommend?
I have. This is Michael. Hello.
Hi, Michael.
Hi. Yeah, I've actually gone through a number of these kind of all-in-one block systems, like Ultimate Blocks, like some that were made specifically for to boost Elementor. The Astra theme makers have their own blocks package, and it's interesting because a lot of them kind of have the same blocks. There's a lot of overlap, but it seems like each one has just one block type that is a little bit better than the other. So you end up kind of having to either get multiple or kind of rolling your own if you get enough of them and then need like a better tabs block and end up having to make it yourself. But Ghost Blocks is a good one. Yeah, and the ultimate add-ons for Gutenberg is the one that's made by the same makers of the Astra theme. And that's especially good if you're using Astra, but also good on its own.
How do you find your experience with changing text size, changing color, adding padding, things like that with these block builders? Do you find it easy? Do you find it difficult?
It's entirely dependent on the individual plugin. Some of them handle that better. Some have, you know, a greater tie-in with kind of how Gutenberg natively works and takes in some of their overrides for type sizing. But when I am doing this, I'm generally setting the styles globally for a block and want the block to be implemented as natively and cleanly as on its own, rather than providing really specific controls on a block by block instance, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. Makes sense. This one's kind of interesting. Looks like kind of a card block where you get to choose a different overlay, a different vector graphic overlay.
Mhm.
Gives you all sorts of options there. That's the first time I've kind of seen something like that.
Yeah, I was also going to say, going back a bit to the block building, I'd kind of asked this question for anyone else's perspective on this as well, but I found lazy blocks, it's a builder, and rather than whereas doing it in React might be the toughest approach, ACF is that nice bridge. Lazy blocks, I feel, is an option more for visually oriented builders, and you can code in PHP, in HTML. You have a few more options, and you can come up with your own custom blocks pretty nicely and efficiently.
Okay. Yeah, this is cool. So this looks like it's similar to advanced custom fields. You may not have some of that back-end design, it looks like. It's more the classic style of advanced custom fields where it gives you the input boxes you need. It'd be on the developer to kind of make that template in the front end, I assume. Yeah. Very cool. This is a neat little tool. I've never seen this before.
Yeah, I've been happy with it so far.
I will
Is
add
that
this.
free?
Yes.
Cool.
I will add this to our list.
Sorry, I didn't mean to take you back to the old.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all. I'm really glad you shared that. I like hearing about new things. So that's another nuance I noticed with Gutenberg. When you create a link, you can't just paste the link in there and click out of the text box. You have to hit return in order to save that link. Okay, I'm gonna save this page really fast. Block layouts and spacing. There was one more. Ghost Kit, that was the one. Does anybody else have any other plugins or extensions they'd like to share with the group? Any experiences, anything that they wouldn't recommend? It doesn't have to be something you would recommend. Is there anything that you would recommend people stay away from?
Has anyone used ACF blocks for doing custom blocks with Gutenberg and could share that maybe?
I can share one.
Advanced custom fields for those of you who don't. If I just said ACF, sorry.
So let's start with the actual field group. That's a good one. Let's do our tab. Is this what I'm looking for? Yes. So let me bring up the page that this is on. So you can see these tabs here. Office statewide, ranked in #1 customer service, and then the content below them in those sections. Those sections match this field. We have the title, and then the content area, or the tab title and the content area, tab title, content area, all the way down to the last one. The settings below, we've set this to be a block. Normally you'd set it to like, does this show up on a post type? Does this show up on a page type? Can we attach this to a certain category or user? But for this one, when we attach it to a block, that means it's going to show up on every page that's using Gutenberg. It's going to be an option. None of this will then apply because it'll be in the block menu and it won't be in any of the side menus or the area below. So now if we go to the page that this block is on, marketing and selling. So this is an advanced custom fields block. It's not styled exactly like you would expect a Gutenberg block to be. This page seems to be running a little slow right now. There we go. Now it's catching up. But it works in the editor. You know, I can find it in here. Yeah, I believe it's this one. So if I wanted to add it again, give it a second to load here. That's what the front end preview looks like in the admin. And then if I were to hit the edit button, it would give me all my tabs. So let me remove this one. And I'll actually change this one back to preview. And that's what it looks like in the preview. So it doesn't exactly match the front end, but you can make it match the front end. I didn't in this particular case because the client didn't care, didn't want to pay for me to go in and spend another 5 hours to match the back end to the front end. And so they were fine with just having this edit tab and then having it look like presentable on the front end. Oftentimes, you know, if it's in the client's budget, I'll design the back end to look just like the front end, which is the idea of a WYSIWYG. What you see is what you get. You might have seen this before, the WYSIWYG. It's a funny looking word, but what it stands for is what you see is what you get. It's always been a thing in WordPress. They claim to be the best WYSIWYG for years when they only had the input box. But you know, when you actually look at that input box, the old input box that WordPress used to use, what you saw in that box was often not what you got on the front end. So this is why they adapted Gutenberg to have a truly modern, what you see is what you get feel behind it. But as you can see in this particular case, the client didn't care for that. They only cared for the front end version of that. So that's an advanced custom field block. Any questions on that? learning more about how that block was built into the template. I guess I can go into that kind of quickly here. This particular block, when I built that one, I think that was actually one of the first blocks in Gutenberg I built about 2 years ago. So if I rebuild it today, I'd probably build it a little differently, but this one's actually built into the theme. Trying to remember. Wow, it's been so long since I've edited that block that I can't even remember where I put it in here. Here we go. So here's my tab split. This website was built using Laravel, so that's a PHP templating engine, but this is essentially my advanced custom fields field PHP input right there. So if you're familiar with advanced custom fields, again, I think this is the much easier way to build a custom block. Definitely a lot easier than using the React version.
Is there any downside to using ACF as far as building it in terms of performance or speed or any other considerations?
You know, ACF is a really well trusted plugin. They seem to have the performance around that plugin pretty locked down, pretty tight, pretty quick. I've never seen, you know, drastic performance problems related to advanced custom fields. They do say that React is potentially faster. As I had said before, React creates that clean markup, but advanced custom fields can do the same thing. You write the markup in advanced custom fields just like you would in React. So you can have any markup you want. You can match it to a Bootstrap framework or a Tailwinds framework or any custom grid or anything that you may be working with or custom component library that you may be working with. Mm-hmm. As far as performance, one over the other, you know, off the top of my head, I couldn't say if they're both built properly, they're both going to perform pretty well for you.
Something I'd like to point out is that when you use a plugin to create your blocks, then you're basically jobbing out the formatting to your database. So there are advantages to keeping your database for content only and your code base for the formatting. So it's, if you wanted to scale your site to, let's say, an enterprise level, then that's where you would start to find difficulties. So for example, if you want to write unit tests, it's difficult to write unit tests for something where the formatting is coming from the database. Or if you wanted to pivot, let's say you wanted to move to you know, something that uses the REST API to broadcast content to another type of app or something. It's difficult to scale that way just because, again, like I say, your database is no longer only governing the content, it's also governing the structure of the site. Try not to get too deep into the weeds, but in a broad sense, I think that's where you would start to run into problems.
Absolutely, yeah. And if anyone wants to expand on the back end of experience of that, please feel free to chime up. I'm a front-end developer. I dabble in back end, but it's not my expertise. Thank you for adding that to the conversation, definitely. Any other questions on anything we just kind of looked at in the past few minutes?
Just to add to that, I mean, you said that blocks are, you know, they're not as visual, but they're faster and of course preferred. Do you have any, is it okay? I guess the question is for performance, if you add like let's say you add Elementor or Oxygen to a site, but only a few pages are using it, is that going to slow down the whole site, or or is it just going to slow down the page that it's, that's rendered or built with Elementor, or let's say Oxygen as another one, because I've heard that performs better and is faster than Elementor these days.
Yeah, my experience with page builders is that all of them generally tend to slow down sites. Some do seem better than others, but page builders in general, I've seen them slow down sites. I've also seen them be quick, but those tend to be the leaner sites with lesser plugins, not a lot of content, a few pages. Some of it depends on the server you're hosting on too. If you get a big beefy server that's well above what you need, your site will probably run faster if you have a lot of plugins. I've seen people who stack all sorts of plugins and sometimes more than one page builder on their site. And then their site gets really slow. And then they go and spend more money on hosting. Like, you don't always need to go and have those big beefy servers. Sometimes you want to minimize the plugins you have, and it'll actually help you out a lot more and help boost your SEO and kind of cause like a ripple effect on the performance of your site. So generally, I'd stay away from page builders. But it's easy for me to say that. I got the skills where I can go and build. I definitely understand why people use page builders. Absolutely, like there is a need for them out there. But with Gutenberg, it's my hope that need will minimize a little bit. As a developer, personally, I don't like going in and working with page builders. It's not my preferred thing to work in.
Sure. Okay, thanks.
Something else to bring up, that was excellent advice, by the way. The page builders, they just add a lot of bloat to your code, and the more plugins you have, it just adds a lot of bloat, because let's say you have a carousel plugin and only one page in your site has a carousel. Well, guess what? Probably that carousel plugin dumps its code onto every page of the site. So it's wasting space on every page of your site. And the reason that that's an issue is because Google is more and more valuing sites that load quicker. In fact, next month, they're rolling out a new algorithm that scores highly what they call Core Web Vitals. So that is how quickly your page renders, how quickly your page loads, and then whether your content jumps around after it's loaded. So next month, in fact, is a big step in the SEO world, where people are trying to now minimize their page load time. So page builders, lots of excessive plugins, all the things that Scott just mentioned are things that work against your SEO score. So if you're trying to score highly in Google, then you're working cross purposes to that.
Dave, can you clarify what you meant by your content jumps around?
Yes, if your classic example would be if your images aren't coded properly, so they don't have a width and a height. So you have an image box that loads, but the page doesn't know how big it is. So it's just an image tag that has no dimensions. But once the image loads, then it expands to the size of the image that's natively loaded. That means that all the content underneath that now jumps down to accommodate the size of that image. And the user is already looking at your page because all the text is already on your page, but now suddenly what they were reading has jumped because the image has jumped. So things like that.
Okay, thank you.
That brings up a question that I have now. And this might be something that only Google knows the answer to. But if you were to use a lazy image loader,
yeah.
So that means as you scroll down the page, image load, like an image will load. And oftentimes we use this to speed up the loading of a page when you first land on it. E-commerce sites will use this. You may notice as you scroll down, product images appear as they come into your window browser. Would that be included in like content jumping around?
No. If you have the image sizes set properly, the plugin should reserve a spot for them to load up. Google loves the lazy load. You're good.
Right. Yeah. Excellent. Okay. going back to our topics, block layouts and spacing. So I'm going to change this to an H2. Does anybody know why I've been making these H2s as I go? Does anybody know about headings and ordering of headings?
As far as SEO goes,
Yeah.
And
Just-
accessibility.
yeah, just importance of content, how it'll be read.
Yeah. So
From what I understand, you only have one H1 tag. And then
correct.
else as a heading under that.
Correct. So you will have one H1 tag per page, which in Gutenberg is your title up here, heading 1. And what Google expects is your headings to go in order after that. So this is my H1. And below that, I have an H2. If I were to have another title in here, I'd make it an H3 below my H2. You can have multiple H2s, multiple H3s, but they still should go in order. So I can go from an H2 to an H3 and back to an H2, but I shouldn't jump to an H4, or I shouldn't jump from an H4 to an H2. The idea is that your headings count in order up or down as you scroll down the page. So for each topic that we're covering tonight, I'm choosing those headings to be an H2. And if we were to get into a subtopic within that topic, I would make that an H3 for those notes. So block layouts and spacing, headings and headers.
Scott, you can make each of your H2s, you can number them to H2, H3, H4, H5, and H6 as well if you want to, right?
Yeah, I believe they go, H6 is the highest. I'm not even sure the rules on like H7 and beyond that. You might be able to use them. I haven't actually read about that. I've never had the use case for that much. But yeah, you would still go in order. Like I wouldn't jump from an H2 to an H6. I would have to go all the way up to H5, which in most of my content, it's not a necessity. If you're going above H6, you might want to consider another page. Breaking up your topics into smaller sections, more readable pages. Yeah. One thing that I commonly see people do in Gutenberg, I see this all the time at work, and I need to always correct people on this. When they want to add a space, they just hit enter twice, and then they start typing again. Why shouldn't we do that? Does anybody know why we shouldn't do that?
Well, didn't you just add like 2 more blocks with each one of those returns?
Yeah. So that's one. We just added 2 more blocks.
So you're not inside the blocks you were wanting to edit.
Mhm.
You're just below it.
Well, we still want a space in here. We'd still like to add a little bit of space, maybe below our heading or in between paragraphs, or if we were to put an image there, maybe it looks better with a little bit of space around that image.
I think there's a spacer.
Yeah.
Which is that just a spacer block?
Yep.
Yeah,
That is
okay.
the whole point of this block, is to create space. It's a really nice block in my opinion. You can expand it, it's draggable. Or you can set a number over here. You can also add classes or anchors to it.
What does the anchor do?
That's an ID. So if you're familiar with classes and IDs, you can have as many classes on a page as you'd like, but you can only assign one ID per page, or per you can only have one ID name per page. So anything can have an ID, but they all have to be different IDs. Whereas a class, you could use the class name on multiple things.
So you could scroll to that anchor of that,
Yes.
of
Yeah.
just of that
So-
space in a navigation.
Yeah. So if I were to put MySpace, so that's your anchor tag, your ID tag, and then you'd call that name, save that, make sure that, and then we can see our anchor there. I'm going to update this, refresh this page. I'm going to shrink it up just to make sure that we scroll. And now here's my link. When I click it, I'm brought down to that space box, which is right here. So that's
So
how anchor links work.
I see.
So Scott, let's just say when you're reading blogs, especially in accessibility, they'll list your headers of each one, and then when you click on each one, it takes you down below into the document. So you do that the same way?
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, let's change this. So let's change this to extension plugins. Then we'll add another one. Saving and reusing block content. What was our other one? Block layouts and spacing. Test your site for SEO. Okay, so now blocks, spacing. What's that? Where did that come from? Anybody else seeing this?
Yep.
Somebody just drawing
Somebody playing with the annotate functions in Zoom.
here?
Oh, wow.
Try and make this real quick. Block content. Spice this up even a little step further. We got 3. So that was a pretty quick way to create a single page now. So now I have a scrolling nav at the top of my page. How do I get rid of this annotation? There we go. Okay. So that's kind of nice. Another way you could do this, you could even say like button. There's a button block. You could do the same thing here. You could do extension, and then actually use buttons up there. That was not an intuitive drag. Wow, that's twice now. Okay, so there we go. Seems to be a little easier. That's what we wanted. So we could put a whole row of buttons up there that scroll down the page if we wanted to. That's pretty interesting. That's a nice little feature. That was really hard to do in the old editor. Really hard to do. So that's a big step up. Move. That's what I wanted. Move our navigation above. Now I can use the duplicate feature to make that button again. Not liking that drag and drop. Got to hit that button first. Wow, that was odd. So there's some intuitive here. We're still lacking some of the intuitiveness that we need. If you can see, like it's almost like I'm clicking in the dark here. Like I click on stuff and I don't know, it's hard to tell what I'm selecting. So that's kind of a not so great thing that I'm seeing right now.
Sometimes when I run into that problem, I use that little icon at the top with the lines on it, I think, where it kind of shows the layout. Yeah, and I think you can drag and drop in there too.
Yeah, so you see it's grouped our buttons, which makes sense. If I try and drag and drop here.
Maybe not.
Yeah.
I swear I've seen that somewhere. Maybe it was an add-on I did or something. But at least that makes it easier to select things when you're clicking around. God, sometimes you put like a horizontal rule in there that's 1 pixel and you cannot select that.
Okay, so I'm just gonna go ahead and just do that again. Can I move this now? No, it still makes it a group. Can I transform this to a button? Will it let me do that? No. But I can change it to a heading or a quote. We do have some options here if I want to change this block after I build it. But not to a button, not for this one. That's crazy. See, like, now that won't go away. There we go. Still a little bit of work to do in Gutenberg. Still a little bit of work to do. Does anybody have anything that they'd like to share? For the last topic, testing your layout for SEO improvements, we've kind of been touching that on that all night. So we can continue to talk about that, or we can go back to any of the topics that we've been talking about if anyone has a question that they didn't get to ask or anything.
I mean, I would be happy to hear about the SEO. I think I'm like curious whether through editing my own site, if I've embedded problems in it. So, I mean, I'm pretty cautious about what I edit, but I've had to update some plugins and things, and I kind of do it in blind. So I probably need to hire somebody to come and look at the health of it.
And you said you're using like about a page editor?
I am, well, yeah, I mean, Avada is the theme, and then Theme Fusion. And Avada came up with this Avada Live, and it's actually pretty slick, but I have a bug, and I have the bug documented. I have looked at it. I know exactly what line in the code it is, but I just don't know. I don't dare touch it because I'll screw it up. I'll like break it, and I won't be able to repair it, and I won't be able to know what I did. So, but I know I have it all documented, and I've really just looked at it hard, but I don't know how to improve it. And I have about 4 things on, well, 3 or 4 things on the homepage that I want changed. And it's not just text editing. It's like in the slider, the heading slider, and then down at the bottom part of the page, I have 6 images. And when you mouse over the images, there's text in there, and I want to change the text. And with Avada Live, I should just be able to do Avada Live, but I'm getting an error. And so, yeah. So I don't know how yeah, and then calling Avada is like impossible. And then, yeah. So I'd get somebody, I'd rather pay somebody to just, at this point, to kind of help me get out of the weeds and maybe kind of look at the health of it, because you're maybe through the conversation tonight, I've just curious about where my SEO is. I haven't really spent a lot of time worrying about it because I'm just trying to, cross the line and building content and, in LearnDash. So anyhow, those are kind of some of a little bit of the background. So.
I apologize. I've missed some of the comments over here in the chat. We are getting to the end of the night. It is kind of that point in time where we can make connections. If anybody is available to help Renee, please drop her a line in the chat or exchange your info.
I put my phone number in the chat too, so feel free to grab it and text me or call me or whatever. I'm in Colorado some mountain time.
Yeah. I used to live in Colorado.
What part?
Denver and Breckenridge and Frisco and Edwards.
Oh, a few places.
Yeah.
I live in Fort Collins, so I live up near sea.
Some of my first web jobs were for the ski resorts. I did a lot of work for Copper Mountain.
Oh, very nice. And then you get to ski for free, right?
Yeah, it's a fun time in life. So is there anything that anybody else would like to see in Gutenberg tonight with our last 2 minutes? Or I'm also open to hearing topics for future nights. Is there anything somebody would like to cover on our next meetup, or anything they'd like us, the group, to touch upon?
Just wondering, since I've never used it before, as far as contact forms go,
Mm-hmm.
is there contact building already in Gutenberg, or, and I'm just asking out of ignorance.
Yeah, there's no form building in Gutenberg. You would have to find a form building plugin. There's tons of them out there.
Like I use WP Forms.
Yeah. If you want to use the form builder and Gutenberg, keep an eye out for making sure that there's like a form block in your plugin. I know most of them have them, like Contact Form 7 has it, Formidable has it. I'm sure lots of form builders have that.
Okay. Thank you.
Headless WordPress. I'm interested in headless WordPress. Yeah. AB, you want to talk a little bit more about that? What are you thinking with headless WordPress?
It's a direction that a lot of companies are going in.
You want to
And
tell us a little bit about what it is and why we would use it?
absolutely. Yeah, so as you know, WordPress manages your content using a database, so using the admin panel. And then it also outputs everything to the front end. So the users see what you have managed on the front end. So that's called a monolithic approach. And so there's been a lot of interest lately in decoupling those two things. So WordPress continues to manage all of the content in the back end. But since 2016, core WordPress has enabled this REST API. So I don't know if you've ever looked at your website's REST API. There's a certain path you can view, and now you're not looking at content formatted anymore. You're looking at raw JavaScript JSON code that formats all of your stuff. And you can query it. You can look at a list of all the posts in your blog. You can look at all the pages. You can perform search requests. You can, if so properly authorized, you can even make updates to your site using this REST API. So there's a lot of interest now in using some of these modern techniques like React that Scott mentioned a few minutes ago, that sits over here by itself and accesses WordPress API to furnish its content. And there's even one that's really popular right now called Gatsby, and it's awesome. It's just awesome. It's React as a templating engine. And what it does is it takes the content from WordPress's API, and then it generates static HTML pages, right? And the benefit of these static HTML pages is that there's no bloat. There's no server PHP having to re-render the page every time it's viewed. It's just static HTML. And you don't even need a web server that runs Apache or Nginx or Node or any other kind of web server logic to serve these pages. You can serve it off of just a static file server. So they load blazingly fast. They're very scalable. They're very secure because hackers have no path to your backend through this front end. But just as a broad introduction, that's a direction that a lot of people are going into now, and it's in my career, that's something that I'm exploring as well.
Yeah. So static pages, as he was saying, are just HTML pages.
Yep.
All that React code that we were talking about earlier, what I have right here is actually a tutorial in Gatsby. And you can see here, like this is where we'll write our code.
Yeah.
But then eventually all of this gets compiled and turned into HTML. And we'll do that, this is all run through what I was talking about before, Node Package Manager. And we'll actually send, in this case, anyway, I'm not going to get into that. That's just getting too technical for this conversation. But we'll send a command that then takes all this code and compiles it into one file. So in this case, it's the it's the public file folder. And you can see in here all of my static pages. I'm not going to spin this site up right now. But you can look in here and you can see that the page, like once it's compressed, once it's compiled, I can actually break this down and you can see the HTML in it. And you notice there's no spaces, it's very tight, and that's to maximize your loading times. Again, doing that for Google, doing that for mostly SEO and that top page speed. So that's getting very, very developer oriented. Always welcome that conversation, but I know we often lose people when we go there. If you want to know more about that stuff, feel free to bring it up. We can definitely point anyone in the direction of learning more about those topics. There's lots of meetups on meetup.com. We could even do a topic here where we do like just a developer night. We do only code specific topics. We tend to do a lot of plugins. We tend to do Gutenberg. We've had some WordPress core developers come and give talks on occasion. We touch on all sorts of stuff here. So always feel free to bring that stuff up, I guess is what I'm getting at.
That's one.
So for forms, Gravity Forms, that's another one. Yeah.
Or them.
I use Formidable. They're a little bit bulky of a plugin. They're definitely working on condensing that plugin down. They've done some nice things that I like recently. But I find the pro version of that form builder to be extremely robust. One thing that I built on it, I don't even know if this is still up. I don't run this website anymore. This estimate builder. Is this the same one? Are you still using it? Yeah. So you go through this form, I'll just do it quick.
And that's with Formidable.
Yeah, this is all with Formidable.
Okay. Wow.
This was Formidable allows you to do things like kind of add this step-by-step bar really easily. I had to go in and style it more. So a lot of this is custom, but the entire form and the process of stepping through and submitting and sending off to different email addresses wherever they need to go, that was all built in Formidable. Extremely handy tool, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
The site I have coming up has a lot of that, different forms going to different departments, and I'm just trying to figure out how I'm going to attack that, whether code from scratch or WordPress, not sure.
Yeah. If you just like, if it's simple contact forms, I probably wouldn't go with Formidable. Formidable is a very big, robust form building plugin. You know, if it's a simple contact form, I'd probably choose something like Contact Form 7. Something that's not as robust and just performs simple features. Like I said, this one in particular is more for like, you know, like this estimator, or like I might put like a school admissions or camp admissions form, you know, something that requires a lot of fields and a lot of sending off to different areas. Yeah.
Now the customization of that was done in the backend code of that plugin or just in the fields of the plugin?
So it depends on the customization. So the action steps, when I hit a button, when I submit a form, when I send data, when I save data, that's all handled in the plugin. But a lot of the styling was done by myself customly. That's the type of thing that I specialize in as a developer.
Got it. Okay. That's pretty nice.
Anything else? So this is one more thing that I noticed about Gutenberg. If I'm on a page for a long period of time, say more than 20 minutes, it hangs up and I can no longer save. Has anybody else run into that issue with Gutenberg? I've run into that on multiple websites using Gutenberg. I'm not sure why that happens. Like a memory maxes out or something.
Who do you use as your web host?
This site would be on Bluehost, but I've also seen it happen on like AWS. I've seen it happen also on WP Engine is the other spot I've seen it happen.
Have you tried a different browser? I hate to say it. I love Chrome and that is my main browser, but every now and then I have issues that are Chrome only. I don't know why.
No,
So
that's a good point. I haven't tried it. I haven't seen it in another browser, but I haven't been editing another browser.
Gutenberg is real particular about JavaScript caching.
Okay.
minification of it as well. So if you're running auto optimize, you have to opt out of the logged in caching. If you're running Cloudflare, you need a special page rule. If you're on Bluehost, you need to change off of Bluehost. Oh wait, sorry. But not to GoDaddy.
Are you guys on SiteGround?
I'm sorry.
I
what was that?
started hosting there.
I'm hosted on SiteGround.
SiteGround?
Yeah. Well, I like it.
So
So
that
I have actually migrated to something new. I'm using GridPane.
Yeah, I'm staying on SiteGround because I just could. Yeah, I'm just trying to get completely off of GoDaddy because my ex-husband keeps going in and screwing with me. Because he can go, I don't know, he's brilliant. He can do anything he wants to me. Anyhow.
That hang up wouldn't happen in local development then, right?
No, I don't see it. I don't see it happening in local development.
Okay.
Not to my knowledge. Now you're making me question myself.
I guess I'll find out.
Yeah. Now I'm going to keep a closer eye out for that because I don't remember if I've only seen it in local, but I've definitely only seen it in Chrome.
And have you done any PHP customization of the actual environment on the hosts?
I've updated PHP. I've updated the max limits, like the max memory limits and such.
Have you updated the max variables?
Yeah.
Okay, because I know that I've seen that a few times. Some of the hosts like to keep it at like 1,000.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, that doesn't work so well for Gutenberg.
Yeah, I've run into a lot of that with page builders. If you get like a big long page using the page builder and you go to hit save, the browser will run out of memory and the page won't save. It's very similar to what we just saw happen here. But I've been able to resolve that with the page builders by upping the memory, as you just described in the variables, yeah. But it didn't seem to be the case here, unfortunately. Maybe I'll go back and take another look at that this week.
I know WP Engine sets their max vars at 10,000.
That's pretty good.
So if it's happening over there, it's probably you may have the object caching on over at WP Engine.
Mm-hmm.
Is there any other issues that object caching causes on WP Engine? I just enabled that on the site and I was wondering, I should probably look.
Oh my God, do not use it with WooCommerce.
Really?
It's horrible with the cart. It screws things up so bad.
Okay. Good to know. Thank you. I'm turning it off.
I have them turn it off quite a lot.
And why is that? Just because it doesn't release, it doesn't refresh, it just keeps too much data in the caching database?
I am not quite sure what the conflict is. My conflict is always with the shopping cart. I've had weird issues where it's like the shopping cart is cached with somebody else's session or something. It's so weird. But once they turn that off, it's fine. I don't know.
Okay. Thanks.
So we've come to that point where we are at the end of the night. I'm going to drop a link to our page that we created tonight in chat. I'll probably spend a few more minutes just cleaning it up briefly, maybe adding to the notes so that we can all go back in there and use it as a reference if we need to. But it'll stay up, it'll remain up, and it will be there until this site is no longer there. With that, thank you all for coming. Please keep an eye out. I'm hoping to do another one next month. Topic to be determined. Maybe we'll get a guest speaker. We will see. Feel free to send me a message or something on Meetup if you have an idea for a topic, and we'll see. Thank you all for coming.
Thank you.
This is fantastic.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Have a great weekend, everyone.
Bye.
Thanks,
Good night,
Scott.
everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Scott.